it's live now.
Okay.
Oh, you know.
Good afternoon. It is 2 o'clock, so let's make a start. Welcome to today's planning meeting of the 18th of September. I would like to welcome members of the public, councillors and officers to this meeting, and I call upon the clerk who will advise how the meeting will be run this afternoon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Please note that we are live streaming this meeting via the Council's YouTube channel to encourage more people to engage in our public meetings. The proceedings of the meeting will also be recorded. Please can I remind everyone to use their microphones when speaking and turn them off when finished. Please can attendees in person refrain from watching the live stream as this will cause interference for our viewers. In accordance with the Constitution, members of the public who have registered to speak will be permitted to do so when invited by Madam Chairman. I have confirmed those entitled to speak. We are not expecting any fire alarm testing today. In the event of an evacuation, you will hear a recorded message requesting you to evacuate the building. Please leave by the nearest exit and the Riviera staff will assist you. Once outside, please assemble in front of the tennis courts to the seaward side of the building. Please also ensure that your mobile phone and iPads are turned to silent. Each application will be dealt with in the following order. The planning officer will present the submitted application and will outline the proposed recommendation in full. Any speakers registered to speak on the application will be invited to address the committee, and this will be taken in the following order. Speakers against, neighbourhood forum representatives, any councillors who are not members of the committee, followed by speakers in support of the application. All speakers will have a maximum of 5 minutes each to address the meeting. This will be followed by questions from members and responses from the planning officer. Once questions from the committee have concluded, Madam Chairman will open the application for debate. At the conclusion of the debate, Madam Chairman will seek a proposer and seconder for the application. The proposal must be in full and include all information such as conditions or reasons. Madam Chairman will then confirm with the planning officer if they wish to enter into a period of summing up. Members, if at any point you leave the meeting for any reason during the consideration of an application, you will be unable to vote on that application. I will now hand the chairing of the meeting to Madam Chairman, Councillor Jackie Thomas.
Thank you. Clerk, are there any apologies or updates to the membership of the committee?
Madam Chairman, I wish to report that with the wishes of the Conservative Group, Councillor David Thomas is substituting for Councillor Billings, and Councillor Cowell and Councillor Mandy Darling send their apologies for this meeting only.
Thank you. Minutes. To confirm as a correct record, the minutes of the meeting of this committee held on the 29th of August 2023. Is there a proposer, please? Thank you. Councillor Paignton. And is there a seconder? Thank you. Whoops. Councillor Joyce. Declaration of interest. Do any members of the Planning Committee have any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest on any of the items on today's agenda? Please raise your hand. Councillor Billings, would you like to come up to the table as, to declare your interest, please? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify, I'm speaking on one of the applications later today in the capacity as ward councillor, and on a subsequent application in the capacity as the applicant. So in relation to the application on Waterside Quarry, I speak as the applicant, and therefore I declare a pecuniary interest. Thank you.
Chair, if I may, can I just confirm for you that Mr. Councillor Billings is not actually a member of the Planning Committee today. He's speaking in his personal capacity and on behalf of his ward and his constituents. So just to confirm that for the notes, please, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Mrs. Barley.
Thank you. Do any officers have any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests on any of the items on today's agenda, please? No indications. Are there any urgent items?
Not as far as I'm aware, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5 then, to consider an application for land east of Limekiln Close, Paignton. We have 2 applications for this address and we will deal with both applications separately. The clerk has confirmed those who have registered to speak upon entry to the meeting. I will therefore ask Mr. Jim Blackwell to introduce the application. Thank you.
Thank you. This application seeks outline planning permission for 25 dwellings, 5 of which to be affordable, with approval of access only. Reserve matters include layout, scale, appearance and landscaping. The site is in Churston with Gampton Ward, but is within the Paignton neighbourhood plan area. Looking at the site characteristics on the member site visit, we walked south, went towards Limekiln Close, up to the top of the site. Where we entered the site, we could see that the site is accessed, is currently clear, although on this plan you can see the original buildings that were there before in an agricultural use. The site sloped down up towards the north. You can see the the dilapidated buildings that were there previously, and then we walk through into the field to the south of the site. The site falls within the White Rock Future Growth Area in the Torbay local plan. It was reserved for future road access to the south, but this is no longer required. The site is part of Inglewood site boundary to provide the northern access route. It's now offered up for housing in the Housing Economic Land Availability Assessment, or HELA, update to excise to provide around 19 dwellings. And again, while we have this aerial photo on, you can see what's up Limekiln Close into the site. You can see the existing vegetation and trees, Brixham Road running to the east, north and south. We also walked to the end of Limekiln Close and saw the close boarded fence relationship between these properties and the boundary with the site. Here's the fence, which you can see, which is with the ownership of the applicant. You can see the garage we looked at on site, the footway and the highway, and looking to the right of this image, you can see where we walked up to Limekiln Close to the top of the site. Here's the rear of Limekiln Close, which is to the left. The vegetation on the right shows the line of the eastern boundary with Brixham Road. You can see here a little clearly, you can see the topography of the site as it drops down to the north. Here you can see the existing access at the southwest of the site. We walked into the centre. Here's the close boarded fence which separates the property on Limekiln Close. Here's the garage. And this is the north end of the site, which you can see has been cleared. And here's Brixham Road to the right-hand side and the site entrance, which is further round. Here's the topographical survey. You see the range of trees and vegetation on the site. Much is clear around this former building, which was centrally in the site here. It's the proposed illustrative layout. So it's just to confirm, it's outline planning permission sought for 25 dwellings, 5 affordable, in outline for access only. Those reserve matters are layout, scale, appearance and landscaping. However, there's an illustrative layout here, which cites 25 dwellings, and you can show what can be achieved on site. So there's the linear southern end, the private driveway that would link to that, the road that would link through running north to south, the site entrance with the red arrow, the retained tree, and another private drive with 2 properties to the north. This is the proposed access and illustrative layout. You can see the vehicle and pedestrian access from the northwest corner. This is the red arrow, with the orange and pale blue lines being the roads that are adopted. The yellow would be a private road, and you can see the blue arrow is the pedestrian access, and the green is the subsequent application you'll see after this one, which is the northern access route. Here's the illustrative building heights. So you can see single story in the lighter colour, and two-storey in the blue. You can see the layout a lot clearer here, where you can see matching positions east-west of the properties, and then that linear row of properties on the southern boundary. Here are the proposed sections. So the first one is north to south. So this is a section through the centre of the site. And you can see the topography where it falls away to the north. The second one, on the second row, is the bottom of the site. So that's the southern end, the access from the northern access route, the new one where we entered the site on the site visit earlier. And the lower one is the central section. So you can see that connection between east-west. Here's the illustrative green infrastructure plan. Running on the boundary of Brixham Road, you can see the 5-metre hedgerow buffer on that east boundary and an 8-metre hedgerow buffer on the south boundary. Also a new bat house on this southern boundary. There is off-site biodiversity net gain, which we discussed. Newts have been translocated from this site, and there's no objection on ecological grounds to the works proposed. This is the proposed off-site biodiversity net gain scheme. This land is agricultural use. It's a field not part of Inglewood or White Rock ecological mitigation land, so this is entirely new. South Hams have been consulted and had no objection. And the BNG, the biodiversity net gain, will be secured through section 106 and details in reserve matter stage, which is referenced in condition 12 in the application pack. Here you can see the proposed illustrative tree protection and removal scheme. So you can start to see this indicative removal of trees in red, trees protected, importantly this one on the entrance of the site. Here are the neighbourhood plan policies. Material considerations, so the principle to development. Again, this is about principle and access only. Design and visual impact, residential amenity, highways access and safety, landscape green infrastructure, ecology biodiversity, flood risk and drainage, low carbon development, affordable housing and housing supply. So the offer recommendation is one of approval subject to completion of the section 106. The conditions outline with final drafting of conditions delegated to the director and resolution of any new material considerations that may come to light. There is a slight amendment. The NHS have requested 2 contributions through section 106, and this is included here, and the recommendation is to include both of these within the heads of terms secured through the section 106 agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. Now we move to our speaker section, and I call Mr. Terry Graham Watson to address the meeting against the application. If you'd like to approach the table, you have 5 minutes, and the clerk will let you know when you have just 1 minute remaining. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So apologies up front. It's hurried put together of this because of the limited time I had given, even after 6 months of asking to be able to do this. However, hopefully we'll get our point across. Just to be clear, I'm not here alone. I represent the whole of Limekiln. Has that gone? Next slide. Okay, so the whole of all the residents of Limekiln Close and a number of others on White Rock Way. I mean, we are absolutely aghast at this application. For example, all of those 6 properties that you can just see on the corner there, bought into this plan of having an access route as per the drawing there, a cycle access route down this area, which was, as I understand it, the original plan. That area in particular is the top of the hill, the top corner there, it's about, I think, 82 metres, and our property, which is the second one in the middle, is about 78 metres in height. So it rises up. It's beautiful views, and it adjoins the Woodland Walk. That's why we purchased this area, and that's why we all bought into it. The reasons, just to go through why some of the reasons why we obviously object. So just for example, as you see, the councillors saw this morning, these houses on the left-hand side, they were built in 2015. The road, that road, Limekiln Access and White Rock Way, is only being completed today. That's 8 years of pain and suffering that we've had. I fought very hard just to get Limekiln Close surfaced, and we've been there 5 years. So the proposal from the councillor's office is saying, oh, we're going to have to suffer, what, another 4 years of construction right on our doorstep. That's not the White Rock plan, that's not what we wanted, that's not what we bought into, and that's completely unsustainable. The red box is the area that was laid down in 2015. Now the red circle there is an example of the parking issues that we get. The centre house with the solar panels on, that property is a 2-bed property. It's got 2 vehicles, a trailer, which is the breach of a covenant convention, and the white vehicle there. That red vehicle is actually parked, that's double parked. Now typically we will see people from other areas come to White Rock to walk around the Woodland Walk from all over Torbay. That's just an example of a lack of good open space that we have. And the vehicles park all along, you know, okay, sometimes on the path, but park there. So some of the concerns from number 1, Mel and her parents, and Denise and Kevin that live on the corner there, their access, as you saw, their garage is right on the corner. They are aghast at that access and how this is going to pan out for, like we all are, with regards to the parking and the lack of parking on White Rock as a whole. White Rock as a whole.
1 minute remaining.
Sorry, 1. Okay. White Rock as a whole has a number of issues. It's just about sustainable. So quickly, you know, the reason why we you know, if you look at paragraph 7 to 9 of government planning guidance, covering economic, social and environmental factors, we found them all. We're not protecting and enhancing this area. The natural geography is higher, it's 4 metres higher, so there we are completely overlooked. It's not going to minimise pollution, and you know, with regards to climate change, etc. Only yesterday, with the heavy rains that we had, I don't have the photo, but you know, I have a photo here that I can share with you. That just to the left of that white Mini there, there's 2 French drains. These were conceived by the planners, the same people that are planning this. They flood.
Thank you, Mr. Graham Watson. Okay. Your 5 minutes are at an end. If you'll be so kind to take your seat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I now call Councillor Adam Billings to address the meeting. Mr. Billings, you have 5 minutes and the clerk will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members. I'm speaking as the local ward councillor, having met a number of the affected residents along Limekiln Close during the period of elections and thereafter. Now, what you just heard from Mr. Terry Watson is that many members were sold their properties based on the fact that the land behind them would be retained as a green space where there'd be a footpath and part of a trail through. And so they understandably feel very aggrieved that what you're actually seeing behind them now is a housing estate. That's not the basis of which they were led to believe they were buying their houses from the developer when they originally bought them. Now, you may, members, feel that that's a material consideration. You may alternatively feel it's not a planning consideration, but I think it should set the tone in relation to the detailed way that you consider some of the points that I'm going to come on to. So members, you heard from officers earlier that this is an outline application, but to give us you some idea about what will ultimately come forward at a later reserved matters stage. There's some indicative detail. And I would highlight that there are some genuine concerns in relation to that indicative detail. And I would just ask members to be very clear in relation to this application that they're considering now. Are they considering the principle, or are they also endorsing that indicative detail? And let me go through some of the concerns in that indicative detail. Limekiln Close, as you saw, members, they're 2-storey properties. What's proposed here is both 2 and 2.5-storey properties. So that's the first point. Secondly, if members think back to a previous committee with Thatcher Avenue, when we considered that development, we were talking about privacy distances. Distances between the new dwellings and distances, or in that case the extension, and distances to concerned objectors. The privacy distances here seem less. One distance is as little as 13 metres. That may or may not be the privacy distance, but surely that's something the committee would want to think about at a later stage and not endorse it now. So that's the second point. And then the third point I would highlight is, if you think back to another previous committee members, we talked about the active and positive frontage in relation to the Torbay motel. Now that showed a large setback distance to the main road. Now is that what you've got here? Are you persuaded from the indicative landscape plans that you've got a large setback distance from the road to give an active and positive frontage? I would suggest not. And the reason I raise these things is because of the wording of some of the proposed conditions. Condition 1, and I highlight the condition 1, this is in the officer's recommended report. It says, the details of reserved matters shall be consistent with the details submitted and approved pursuant to the outline consent. So in other words, are we endorsing the indicative detail that we've had now and saying it's okay? Or are we simply saying, well, we've got to accept the principle, so therefore that's okay, but really we have some concerns and we'll consider those at a later date. And I have real concerns about the wording of that first condition. I think if members are persuaded that we should allow this, and I would ask that you didn't on behalf of my local residents, but if you are, I really would encourage you not to approve the indicative detail, because I think that's something that needs much greater consideration at a later date. And I would say that that's that certainly approving the green infrastructure plan at this stage, which shows a detailed layout, well, that's tied your hand as a committee for a later date if you say, well, you know what, the layout should be different. I'd also raise some queries about some of the other conditions, but it's this point that I think is really key, is that if you're persuaded, contrary to what I'd ask you to do, to refuse this application outright, if you're persuaded that actually you have to allow the principle, then I would encourage you to make sure that condition 1 of the reserve matters is reworded to remove all reference to the indicative detail, because I don't think the indicative detail in this scheme is appropriate. I'd also just like to touch very briefly on the fact that I think that you should ask for a new condition to deal with matters related to neighbour amenity, scale and a positive frontage. And I think those 3 points, neighbour amenity, scale and a positive frontage, if you are prepared to allow this, those should really be matters that the committee wants to consider at a later date, and I think would make the development less bad for those who are clearly going to be affected, contrary to the basis at which they were sold their properties at a previous date. So thank you, members, for considering those points.
Thank you, Councillor Billings. If you'd like to take your seat back in the public gallery. I now call Mr. Maltsby to address the meeting in support of the application. You have 5 minutes and the clerk will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining. If you'd like to approach the table. Thank you.
Hi, Chair. My name is Andrew and I speak on behalf of the applicant. I'm also a director of Dealey Food Estates, the joint applicant. This scheme will deliver up to 25 housing units, which will help Torbay's housing crisis, and even more importantly, will deliver policy-compliant, affordable housing units with no need for grant support and at no cost to Torbay Council. These factors of housing delivery carried considerable weight in the planning inspector's recent decision to approve our Inglewood scheme, where the first affordable housing units are already being built and are scheduled to be delivered before Christmas this year. We are long-term investors in the Bay. We have delivered development and infrastructure, and we wish to continue investing and, more importantly, delivering policy-compliant, affordable housing where others have failed. We have worked for 2 years, both in the pre-app and application periods, to address and mitigate development constraints, specifically ecology, tree and vegetation protection and highway matters. All technical objections to this application have been overcome at your officer and expert advisor level. This land was actually originally acquired by the applicant for highway purposes, but due to the many environmental constraints is no longer appropriate or required for highway purposes. The site now sits within the Inglewood approved site, and since the Inglewood approval, we've been working with your officers and others to improve linkages between Inglewood, White Rock and the wider communities. This work has resulted in planned improved linkages which are subject to the next application you are due to consider. We are aware of neighbour concerns and we have modified our plans to mitigate those concerns as far as we can. We can further modify our indicative proposals at reserve matters stage, including further improving visibility close to 2 Limekiln Close. The existing fence that you saw was actually erected on our land and in breach of covenant, and we will need to address that with the owner of that property. We're also aware that neighbours were told by third parties who did not control the land that the land would never be built on. Those representations were made by people that had no influence, ownership whatsoever over the proposals you now see, and were false. They weren't made by us, they were made by other parties who had no interest in the land. I would therefore urge you to consider your officer's report and resolve to grant us consent to deliver this much needed housing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Maltzby. If you'd like to take your seat. Thank you. Committee members, I will now invite questions to the planning officer. Please may I remind members, questions should only cover matters not raised in the presentation. Are there any members wishing to ask a question? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Fox.
Just a couple of things, Madam Chairman. In the report, it refers to objections, obviously, from local people. And one of those is over education and the overcrowding of local primary schools. Do we know what the situation is? I couldn't find that in the report itself, but clearly this is a concern of some local residents. That's my first question. Do you want me to just come out with my couple at the same time? Does that help you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so my second one is, I would just like to know from the officers how significant this 25 units is for our overall housing supply. And thirdly, which I think was answered on site, but just to clarify it, there's one part of the report talks about 30% affordable housing, but I understand that in fact the figure is 25, as in other parts of the report. It'd be quite helpful to actually get a specific answer on that, so we know exactly what the percentage of affordable housing is. Those are my 3 questions.
Thank you. Mr. Blackwell, do you have a reply? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, there's an educational contribution as part of the Section 106. That's answer 1. Answer 3 is 30% is in error. It is 25%. So at the start of the report, it mentions 30%, and then it changes to 25%, which equates to 5 affordable housing as part of 25. I also have a colleague here, David Pickhaver, might be able to give you a comment on the overall picture that 25 units, 5 of which will be affordable, and how that relates to the overall housing supply figure.
Thank you. I'm afraid I don't have a name tag, but my name is David Pickhaver and I'm Principal Planning Policy Officer. The Council currently is able to demonstrate around just under 2.2 years housing land supply. Against where we should be in the local plan, we have a shortfall of about 1,295 homes. So proportionately, 25 homes isn't going to fill the gap, but 25 homes is still a fair number of homes that would carry weight in the planning balance. It must be said that members have asked us to review the local plan review that we did a couple of years ago to see whether or not the government standard method figure, which is the formula by which we calculate housing need, is right. Even if we took the very lowest figure we could possibly argue, which would be probably about 400 homes a year, which is the census increase between 2011 and 2021, that would be about 400 homes a year. And over the last decade or so, we've provided around 330 homes a year. So whichever way we look at it, there's likely to be a housing shortfall, which has to factor into the overall planning balance and the weight given to a planning application. But to answer Councillor Fox's actual question, 25 homes against 1,295 is a fairly small proportion.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Fox, are you happy with your answer, or did you have a follow-up?
The only follow-up I've got is on the education. We've got the section 106, I accept that. I just wonder whether there was anything from anybody in education who is still objecting, as some of the residents are. Do we have that information or not?
There's no objection on education grounds due to the contribution.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Councillor Thomas. David. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand that this is an outline planning permission. We have some indicative drawings. I am a little bit concerned about how much weight we can attach to an indicative drawing, because effectively that demonstrates that we can get 25 on the site. And yet the indicative drawing actually doesn't give us any strength moving forward. And we've got another application coming up in a moment, which is for detail, which talks about indicative plans, and actually that the application is different from the indicative plan. Yeah? So clearly, the indicative plan carries a lot more weight than I could believe it would do. So I guess that's my first question, and then I've got some detail on that, if possible.
This links with the speaker earlier as well, which is helpful just to come back to that. So it's up to 25. It's not 25, it's up to 25 properties. And it's also worth noting that it's 2-storey, so it was 2.5-storey, and now it's been amended to 2-storey. So you're right, it does have some weight in those. And I think it's a useful point to recognise that in the reserve matters condition, suggested condition, I actually agree that we could remove that sentence, which the member commented on, around the details reserve matters shall be consistent with the details submitted and approved pursuant to the outline consent. We could easily remove that. That's delegated to officer. So I'm happy to take that out if that gives you some breathing space and some flexibility. And just worth recognising it's up to 25.
Councillor Thomas, are you happy with your answer, or do you have a follow-up?
Through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, much appreciated. If we can go into some of the detail then on the indicative, and the map that you've got currently on screen is perfect. I don't know if you're able to zoom in or not. I might be asking you the impossible. If I am, I can work on it, what I've got here. Okay, so it is particularly that, that dwelling on the right-hand side that's got the cross. If you come down, it's a square building on the right-hand side. That's it, across there. Now, when you zoom in and you look at the buffer that's been allowed for on that side, it's 5 metres on that edge, 8 metres on the back hedge. But actually, when you zoom in and you look how close that building is to that 5 metre zone, it almost sits, you know, overhangs the 5 metre zone. Whereas if you go further down the road to the built environment, and forgive me, I think it might be Duke Close, is it? The next one down. That one currently sits, I would imagine, as about 8 metres back from the road. So my concern is if we are trying to, and I can fully understand why you'd want to push it out as close as possible to the road, because you want space on the left-hand side. You don't want to push those houses, you know, with no gardens and have, you know, very little visibility, privacy between those. But I think I've got some real concerns over that corner. And, I mean, the thing is, it's supposed to be, it talks about for good living, a decibel range of 55. Oh, sorry, my apologies, below 55. However, it talks about, in that particular location, a noise attenuation fence could get the sound down to somewhere between 55 and 60, which is potentially above the 55, which kind of, for me, gives me another concern. Now, I do understand that, you know, this is detail, but for me, this demonstrates why maybe we can't get 25. I am, you know, I understand, and I understand the residents' point of view from what they believed was coming forward. The reality is, as a planning committee, we have to look at the application from an outline planning permission on its own. So I understand all of that, no problem. But is the case made for, and I said, if it's up to 25, well, that's a different discussion point, and actually a discussion for not today. That's a discussion for when it comes back with the detail. But I just wanted to try and get my concerns, and maybe we could just have, well, if there's agreement later, to have it as an informative, that these are some of the concerns that I might be on my own, who knows, in which case it won't be going as an affirmative. But I just think that they are, for me, one of the issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Mr. Blackwell.
In terms, it wasn't so much a question there, but in terms of like observations on that, thank you. You're quite right. I think there's a few things at play there. There are the amenity issues of that future occupier. There's also, obviously, you've got the fence that would be produced on, put in along there, but also that planting, which is a 5 metre buffer, not just for noise, but for ecology value. So there'll be some things around lighting there and windows position. So the devil's going to be in the detail of that in the next application for reserve matters if approved. So, but also looking at that, when you look at the route going south, there's a whole legibility thing there as well about the role of that building, announcing that point of arrival into that T-shaped block. So there's quite a few, we're straying into the detail there, but I recognise your point around noise, also links to ecology, but also links into like layout a lot more. So all that would come through reserve matters, but I do understand your point, and it's something that there's been some flexibility and some shift in this layout, particularly around heights. So remove from take it down from 2.5 to 2, thinking about at that point you're starting to rise up as well. So there's the interrelationship with the property opposite. So there is a lot at play there, but I recognise your point. So I hope that's, we're well aware of those points, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Councillor Fox, thank you.
Just to answer one of Councillor Thomas's questions, the proposal is for up to 25, just so that we're absolutely clear. It's what's before us now, rather than at some future stage. So I understand your concerns about that particular property, but it does say up to 25 dwellings. That's my point.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Toshard, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some concerns being expressed about the amount of vehicles parking in the surrounding roads, and although visiting the site this morning, clearly some of the roads are not what I would term actually complete. So, you know, that may have up till now had an effect. But can we be satisfied that there will be adequate parking for up to 25 dwellings on that site, please?
This links to that other point as well from the speaker around parking is up to the standards that would be required. There's also the way it's been designed or illustratively designed, there's limited ability to park on footways and park on those landscaped areas because of the density of the landscape. So those two things have been thought up, providing the right amount of parking for those dwellings that are proposed, but also planting is illustrated to show that you couldn't then park on those areas because it's a recognised issue that because of car ownership. But again, those issues are outside the red line of the site largely. But in terms of this site, it's shown as having adequate parking. And also we mentioned amenity as well, which links to that as well. So just making sure that the bedroom sizes, the plot sizes, the bedroom sizes are all adequate and the amenity space sizes as well. So all those things were covered in the reserve matters and as part of this illustrative, they've all been under scrutiny.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? No more questions? Okay, well, we're going to go over to Mr. Simon Catterall. I believe you've got a few comments to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think the first point to make is the point raised by Councillor Billings about the relevance of things that were said to the owners of properties by the developers. And just to confirm that the advice is that isn't a material planning consideration. That's a matter between the owners and the developers and the people who sold them those houses. The second point I was going to make is that, well, I still make, is that the illustrative material is not part of the application and isn't approved, but the planning officer said, and I would agree that that part of the conditions should be removed, and I think it's important that the conditions do make it very clear that the illustrative material that has been provided is not necessarily acceptable or such wording as that the planning officer considers appropriate. So it is doubly clear that the illustrative material isn't approved.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, so I think we will go in to the debate. So now I open questions for the debate. Do we have any questions, please? Councillor Thomas.
Apologies. I'm quite happy to move the recommendation. However, condition 1 and what I have written, and it is here for interpretation and just to be helpful and be guided by our service manager. So I've got the details of the reserve matter shall have regard to the noise on the eastern border, ecology and noise attenuation of the 5 metre and 8 metre buffer zone. Please note the current illustrative material would not be supported in its current form. How do start for 10?
I'm not sure not supported in its current form would be acceptable, but there's enough flexibility in the reserve matters condition 1, which clearly states layout, scale, appearance, materials, hard surface areas, and all the landscape. I believe that truly covers everything that would relate to that, but framed in a positive way. And I think by removing the details of reserve matters should be consistent with the details submitted and approved pursuant to the outline consent would still give the same rigour and control as your condition that you're suggesting, but it's framed in a positive way. Would you agree with that, Simon? Mr. Catterall?
Yes, so Jim, I agree with that.
Thank you. Are you happy with that summing up, Councillor Thomas?
I'm here to be guided, yes.
Thank you. So is that a proposal or is that...
Yeah, happy to move that as a proposal.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Pentney, I believe, was first.
What Councillor Thomas suggests is sensible, so I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Pentney. Do we have any debate on the proposal? Thank you. Okay, so we don't have any further debate. So I think we will go to the vote. So all in favour with Councillor Thomas' proposal. Thank you. That's carried unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so I think we'll move on to item 6, which is to consider an application for an access track south of Limekiln Close, Paignton. The clerk has confirmed those who have registered to speak upon entry to the meeting. I will therefore ask Mr. Jim Blackwell to introduce the application. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the second application, and this proposes the realignment of the northern section of the approved northern access route for Inglewood. The site comprises the realigned section of northern access route through the woodland area, south of White Rock, and the road surface of Limekiln Close. The southern arm is a private road, and the northern part is public highway. Here you can see the site layout. So we've not wanted to rehearse what we said earlier, but Limekiln Close, we walked into the site at this point. Here's the end of Limekiln Close, and then into the track, as we saw, and we waited on this corner here and saw the distance, approximately 80 metres into the site, where this alignment would take place. Here's the original approved route of the NAR, Northern Access Route, in the outline permission granted for Inglewood back in 2017. It was varied in 2022, and the red lines indicate the section that this current proposal provides an alternative for. Sorry, let me put that so you can see, just for clarity. That's the point we saw earlier, coming through, and that's where we walk today to see the connection to the existing properties. So the new shared foot and cycleway surface is proposed for the section between the two blue lines. It's approximately 80 metres in length and around 3 metres wide, although as we saw today, you can see that there was a raise in level towards the middle, and there's a mix of bound gravel and soil. In the woodland area, it joins onto the route of the approved northern access route and turns south to enter Inglewood. The green arrow shows us unsurfaced path from White Rock Play Area, which is approximately here. Here's the existing track and the junction with Limekiln Close. Here's the view north along the track towards Limekiln Close. It's the last property. And here you can see that change in level where it raises up, and the change of that surface from tarmac to the gate into this vegetation and the mud and the bound and the gravel that's along through there, and then turns away from the picture to the left. This photograph shows the existing view southwest along that track, a lot drier than it is in this image, but you can see to approximately here, that's the 80 metres. This is orientated to show, this is the proposed layout, this is the engineering drawing, show the alignment. Here's the end of Limekiln Close, travelling south and then curving around to this point. It shows the alignment, the width, the spot heights, and the gradients have been adjusted to adoptable standards for easy mobility, such as wheelchairs, prams, bikes. And the retaining walls are shown in green and black, so they are shown to provide a dash line to cut through that landscape, and finishes and materials to be agreed in the conditions that are suggested. Here's a close-up of that end which joins with Limekiln Close. Limekiln Close is here, and there the surface would run down south. This is the section drawing that shows the gradients, but just bear in mind these are compressed, so no gradients would be over 1 in 12, so it would meet adoptable standards. Here are the neighbourhood plan policies and the principle for development, which is the key issues of material considerations. So the principal development, impact on visual amenity, residential amenity, highway safety and accessibility, ecology, biodiversity, flood risk, drainage, low carbon and sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. I now call Terry Graham Watson to address the meeting against the application. You have 5 minutes and the clerk will let you know when you have just 1 minute remaining. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we believe this is simply unsustainable. Just on the detail of that and the point of the original plan, I mean, obviously we were lied to, clearly, and we were lied to partly by this council because that plan was shared to me in 2018 by the council at the time. The reason why this wiggles down the hill is to save, because of the height difference, to the biggest boundary, it's the highest point. If you come, or actually at the beginning, where Limekiln is, if this path comes to the top of Limekiln, the whole traffic just flows straight down. That's not sustainable for every day. It may be good for a cyclist. It's not ideal at all for like disabilities or any other coming straight onto the road. That's why we all bought into the fact of this nice path that went round and comes down to the bottom of Limekiln. There are other opportunities. There's a path to the left-hand side or to the west of the play park. There's an existing park that, again, that will be step-free, that could allow better access. Or preferably, as to what we want, is to keep the existing plan. That works. That you know, why absolutely not? Just to give you an idea of the scale of this development, you can see the White Rock playing fields in the middle of the screen there. It's not even, it's about 0.75 of a football pitch. And the highest point is the house on the south side of South Point of Limekiln. So you're taking this footpath to the highest point. That doesn't make sense. That is not good to a traffic area. That's just going to bring all the traffic down there, and particularly for disabilities, that's just I cannot see how that can be recommended at all. Just to give you an idea, I will play this video because I didn't give an opportunity, but the site where we want that path to be comes down there. It's a small area. You can actually see how the locality, the busy Brixham Road just there, you actually see a caravan passing, and that goes on to the noise issues. It's unsustainable. The path will create more noise, and the other development will create a lot more noise. This is actually an acoustic bowl to the left to the play park area. It acts as acoustic bowl, and all noise is amplified around there. You can easily have a conversation the other side of the road and think they're 5 minutes away. With the traffic coming down Limekiln again, that noise will just be amplified continually. So these measurements that are taken, and that we're not even achieving, it's just overdevelopment. It's unsustainable overdevelopment, and it's not part of White Rock. We bought into White Rock. We pay into White Rock as a separate tax, and just having the footpath in the original planned area will mitigate all those factors. Having it coming down Limekiln and the additional housing will amplify it. Yeah, that's pretty much what I can say about the path, but it's simply in the wrong place. I mean, as the one mitigation, i.e. is to say have it more on the west side where the existing play park, where it won't come on directly onto a road, where it's less steep, and if we are going to go down this, and
1 minute remaining.
Thank you. Then that is a much better option than the existing highest point, because it is the highest point, and people will speed down a small close. That's simply not acceptable from a safety point of view. The children already do it already, so you're looking at a whole of Inglewood coming down White Rock, Limekiln Close, and subsequent developments in the mitigation area, which is the right area to build on, actually, which prevents these issues. It's dense housing, it's overdevelopment, and many of us, everyone on this site is against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham Watson. If you'd like to take your seat back in public gallery. I now call Mr. Andrew Maltsby to address the meeting in support of the application. Mr. Maltsby, you have 5 minutes and the clerk will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining. Okay, I'm terribly sorry. We do have the wrong information. Please accept our apologies. Mr. Blackwell?
My apologies. I sped through my presentation so much I didn't conclude on the final slide, which is the officer recommendation. So apologies for that.
That's
I can
okay.
put that on screen.
Do you want to pop it in now?
Yeah, it's,
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So it's the recommendation is approval subject to completion of section 106 within 6 months to secure the heads of terms as outlined. The planning conditions as outlined and the final draft delegated to the director, and a resolution of any new material considerations that may come to light delegated to the director. And apologies again.
No problem at all. Thank you. So, committee members, I will now invite questions to the planning officer. Please may I remind members, questions should only cover matters not raised in the presentation. Are there any members wishing to ask a question from the officer? Thank you. Councillor Madison.
Yeah, this road will provide access for cars and for bikes to what essentially is a beauty spot where people will want to linger. I am wondering whether any thought has been given to bike racks or places where people can store their material while they enjoy that spot. Otherwise, I'm wondering how it works. Thank you.
So this is purely the application for this surface from the blue lines. If you're talking about the actual development that was just part of the decision earlier, that would naturally include cycle storage. There is the existing play area outside the site, which may encourage cycle parking. But as for this application and this red line, there is nothing sought. This is purely for the surface. And just to be completely clear, the vehicle access would remain to the properties along Limekiln Close, to the southerly point of that property there, and that it would become entirely a walking and cycling route, not a vehicle route, just for clarity.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. I don't know if it's a question, to be honest, because I think it may be covered in the recommendation, but just looking for certainty. So we know that this path is kind of designed for mobility aids, small wheels, wheelchairs, etc. as well. And in the report, highways refer to a metallised surface. In the report, it also says that the applicant is kind of happy to provide those details, but we don't specifically say metallised. Is there a particular reason on that? That's all.
Thank you. That's quite right to bring up that. So this route here does not have to be adopted as part of the original permission, the original section 106. The applicant has said it will make it to adoptable standards. There's a couple of challenges in that. Is just making sure we've got the right material, as you say, for mobility and access, but also balancing the flood comments to make sure that it drains, but also the ecological side of it. So there's also a question around lighting and making sure those conditions cover that. So there's 3 areas of that, and once we triangulate those 3 points, we'll get to a situation where it will be built to adoptable standards, to a material that will satisfy everyone involved, including the Highway Authority.
But you will confirm we're not going to get resin?
We will confirm there will be material that will not be resin. That's quite right, because the Highway Authority did not want resin, but it will be material that will be suitable that aligns with everyone's requirements, balancing those 3 issues.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, my apologies for a double negative.
No problem.
Thank you. Councillor Tolshard, I believe you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It was just to ask, I mean, this leads into, you know, a woodland walkway, and my question really relates to any lighting that would be put there. Is there going to be lighting throughout the whole of the sort of walkway that would take you right through to well, essentially to Inglewood, I suppose? And it's lighting which is suitable for bats and everything else and ecology purposes, please.
Again, determined by conditions and that sensitive balance between Devon and Cornwall Police, obviously commenting about visibility and being able to see during that route, but also recognise it's in the countryside, that landscape-led approach, and then balancing the ecological side. So that's covered by condition, but making sure we get the balance right on what's appropriate, given the range of users, given the location and the context. Because we did talk on site that, if you can see that arrow going, the laser pen, pointer pen going across there, that was that buffer zone with the 8 metres at this point, and then wrap round to the 5 metres. So it's important we strike the balance there between ecology, safety, and flooding as well, actually, to do with the lighting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tolshar. Does that answer your question? Or do
Yes,
you have
it
a
does,
follow-up?
thank you. Could I just
Yes,
raise
please do.
something else? Because the pathway is going to be a shared pathway for pedestrians and cyclists, isn't it? So as you come up Limekiln Close and come into the walkway, is there going to be a sort of staggered barrier or something like that to stop any, I don't know, larger vehicles coming through? It's not going to be wide enough anyway for actual cars, is it? But I suppose someone could decide to take a motorcycle along there or something like that. So what kind of barrier is going to be put there, and which will also, you know, mean easy access for cyclists and perhaps pushchairs, wheelchairs and all that kind of thing? Thank you.
There's one of the conditions covers a lockable bollard, so making sure that there's no vehicles can gain access. In terms of motor vehicles like motorcycles, it's incredibly difficult in the public realm to make sure we can control that use, but obviously you hope that the vast majority of people use it positively, and that 3 metre width is that industrial standard, that LTN 120, which would make sure that, you know, pedestrians and cyclists can coexist and link through from this site into Inglewood.
Thank you. Councillor Fox.
I think you've already sort of confirmed these points, but I just want to get them clear in my mind. One is, I think I'm right in saying that our highways have approved this. I think that's somewhere in the report, but just to check on that. And secondly, the bit between the two blue lines, that is no vehicular traffic, possibly other than emergency traffic. Is that right?
So highway have support. The only uncertainty which is covered by a condition would be that final material, which we've just covered with Councillor Thomas. In terms of access, that bollard would prevent any vehicles accessing, but it's lockable, so presumably be access once unlocked to then maintain that woodland walk for exit, not for any blue light or any emergency services I'm aware of, because it's 3 metres wide, so it's about maintenance.
Right.
Thank you. Any further questions? Everybody happy? Okay. In that case, then, we will go into debate. Who would like to lead the debate? Thank you. No debate? Councillor Penny, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can't see any issues that would prevent us approving this as per the officer's report recommendations, so as such happy to move approval as per that recommendation.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Fox. And is there any debate on the proposal? Thank you. Okay, so if there is no debate, then I think we'll go straight to the vote if everybody's happy. So all in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, I think we'll take just a 5-minute comfort break. So we'll resume at just 10 past. And so if everybody could come back for that time. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will now commence. So we're moving on to item 7, and that's to consider an application for a site at Waterside Quarry, Paignton. Can Councillor Billings please come forward to redeclare his interest? You may stay at the speaker's table. The clerk has confirmed those who have registered to speak upon entry to the meeting. I will therefore ask, actually, Councillor Billings, if you just like, sorry, I'm overrunning, I'd like to come to the table first. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee, I'd like to declare that I have a pecuniary interest in item 7 on Waterside Quarry. I speak as the landowner and the applicant, not as a councillor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Do you want to take your seat back, as obviously we're just going to invite Miss Verity Clark to introduce the application, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the application site is Waterside Quarry in Paignton. So the existing site is an expanse of land within the upper section of Waterside Quarry that's adjacent to Waterside Road. So the site was formerly a limestone quarry, and there remains an exposed quarry wall face to the northern and western boundaries. The site is located within an urban landscape protection area, which references an OLPA, and is within 250 metres of a site of special scientific interest. The exposed quarry face, which forms the northern and western boundaries, is designated as a regionally important geology site and a county geological site. So Waterside Road runs to the east of the application site. And just for context, you can see on the aerial photo on screen that the A379 Dartmouth Road is to the west of the site. So this is the application site indicated here of the arrow, and then we've got the main Dartmouth Road to the west. So Waterside Road is a cul-de-sac off of Dartmouth Road, which links to housing and terminates at the Waterside Holiday Park. And you can just see a section of the Waterside Holiday Park here. So as an update to members, since the writing of the committee report, one further objection has been received. So material planning considerations listed within that objection include the impact on the local area, not in keeping, overdevelopment, sets a precedent, traffic and access, and trees and wildlife. So this plan shows the existing site layout. So 3 dwellings have been developed to the southwest of the site at Waterside View, which you can see here. These are the properties at Waterside View, just here. And then to the northwest, 2 dwellings have been constructed, and these are number 26 and 27 Waterside Road. So you can just see them at the top of this image up here. So outline consent with all matters reserved was granted in 2020 via application P/2019/0520, and that was for 3 dwellings on the site. So the current application is the reserved matters application for 3 dwellings, which follows on from this outline consent. So matters for consideration are therefore access, layout, scale, appearance and landscaping, but not the principle of 3 dwellings, which has been established by the outline consent. So the plan now showing is the proposed layout plan, and the proposal includes 3 2-storey dwellings accessed from Waterside Road. So the dwellings will be served by hard-standing parking and turning areas, and house 3 to the south of the site will feature a detached flat-roof garage. So this is the location just of the garage. You can see this is the main access, which leads around, and then we've got parking and turning areas serving all 3 dwellings. So each dwelling is served by a front and rear garden and terrace areas, and there's a shared bin store which is located adjacent to the highway. So the shared bin store is located just here. So the separation distances between the proposed dwellings are approximately 5.45 metres between house 1 and 2, 5.8 metres between house 2 and 3, and there's an approximate separation distance from house 3 to the site boundary of Waterside View of 3.75 metres, and a separation distance of approximately 0.9 metres between the garage of house 3 and the site boundary with Waterside View. So the plan now showing is the proposed elevations for House 1, which is located in the northern section of the site. And just to note a correction to the committee report. So the report states that all dwellings are 2 stories to the east and 1 story to the west. However, this is incorrect. All 3 dwellings feature 2 stories to the west. So proposed house 1, which is detailed on the screen, and both houses 2 and 3 will feature 2 stories and require excavation of the ground, which slopes from west to east. So the dwellings incorporate flat roofs, expansive areas of glazing, grey UPVC window frames and roof eaves, feature areas of timber effect cladding and rendered walls, and feature front projecting 2-story elements with a front balcony. So the first floor section of the dwellings are significantly smaller than the ground floor to break up the massing and to create a more spacious character and appearance given the location within the Olpa. So this is the proposed floor plan for house 1. So the dwelling is set over 2 floors and will feature 4 bedrooms with the main living space of the kitchen, dining and living room set at first floor level. The lower image is a section of the site, and the purple box represents the indicative location and size of the dwelling, which was detailed at the outline stage, and the purple dotted line represents the existing ground level. So next we've got the proposed elevation plans for house 2. You can see again it utilises the same sort of design rationale as house 1. And then this next plan details the floor plans for house 2. Again, it's set over 2 floors, features 4 bedrooms, and the main living space is at first floor level. So then we move on to the elevations for house 3, which includes a larger footprint than house 1 and 2 and a garage. You can see again the design appearance is very similar to the last 2 dwellings. Just to point out, this is the location of the garage just on the screen. So this is the floor plan for house 3. Again, it's 4 bedrooms and set over 2 floors. And we've got a little bit more detail of the garage on this one. So this is the floor plan for the garage, and this is part of the section through the house and then through the garage as well. So this last plan shows the proposed Waterside Road street scene elevation at the top. So you can see all 3 dwellings. The middle image shows the proposed section from Dartmouth Road, showing that with the proposed planting, the dwellings will not be visible. So just for context, the dwellings to the left of this image are number 26 and 27 Waterside Road, so these 2 properties. And the location of the dwellings would be behind here, which means it's shielded. And then this is the property at Waterside View. So then again, the bottom image is a section plan. This is showing number 26 Waterside Road, and then we've got the outline of the proposed dwellings, which is visible above, so you can see these 3 here, and then we've got the dwelling again at Waterside View. So the following are photos taken of the site. So this image shows the existing access into the site from Waterside Road. So this is also taken from Waterside Road, with the corner of the existing access just visible on the far right of the image. You can just see the post there. And then we've got the closest dwellings visible, so we can see the Waterside Road just here in the centre of the image. Waterside View, sorry, in the centre of the image. So again, this is taken from Waterside Road, and we've got a little bit more of the site boundary, which is this area along here, and then you can just see the gated access in that part of the image. And then again, just a little bit further down Waterside Road, so the site is behind this vegetated boundary. So this image is taken standing on the pavement next to 1A Waterside Road. You can just see in the distance number 3 Waterside Road, which is the property here, and which is adjacent to the application site. So the application site is over here. So the next images are taken from within the site, with this image looking towards the eastern boundary, and you can see Waterside Holiday Park visible beyond. And then this image is looking towards the southwest corner of the plot, and you can just see the corner of number 3 Waterside View just in the image just here. And then the last image is stood fairly centrally within the site, facing northwest, and it just helps to show the internal slope of the site. So this slide lists the key material considerations, which are considered in detail in the committee report. As already confirmed, the principle of development has been established via the granting of the outline consent. The application follows on from previously submitted reserved matters applications, which are currently being considered at appeal by the Planning Inspectorate, and included dwellings of a larger footprint, height and massing. It is considered that the footprints presented in the current application, alongside the design, scale and massing, are appropriate for the location and will have an acceptable impact on the ULPA designation. So the impact on residential amenity are considered to be acceptable, and the site provides a safe access onto the highway and adequate parking facilities. Issues relating to ecology have been considered in detail by the Devon County Council ecologist, and providing a Section 106 legal agreement is entered into to ensure the retention of the calcareous coastal grassland in accordance with the LEMP, and to ensure that the HRA avoidance and mitigation measures set out in the Stage 2 appropriate assessment, which was undertaken at the outline application stage, are secured and complied with. This consultee has confirmed that the proposal will have an acceptable impact on ecology. The drainage engineer has confirmed the drainage scheme presented is acceptable, and measures to secure sustainability have been detailed and are acceptable. So when weighing up the proposal against the relevant policies noted on the screen, in addition to the MPPF, which has been updated on the 5th of September 2023, and these changes are not considered to materially alter the committee report, the proposal as a whole is considered to constitute sustainable development and to adhere to these policies. So the officer recommendation is therefore that of conditional approval, subject to the conditions as outlined in the committee report, with a final drafting of conditions delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, the completion of a Section 106 agreement to ensure the retention of the calcareous coastal grassland in accordance with the LEMP, and to ensure the HRA avoidance and mitigation measures set out in the Stage 2 appropriate assessment are secured and complied with, and the resolution of any new material considerations that may come to light following the Planning Committee to be delegated to the Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency, including the addition of any necessary further planning conditions or obligations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Clark. I now call Mr Adam Billings to address the meeting in support of the application. Mr Billings, you have 5 minutes, and the clerk will let you know when you have just 1 minute remaining. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I'm speaking as the applicant and landowner, but I'd like to start by reading from the front page of the officer report, which is on page 69 on the ModGov report. The report says, and I quote, "The Divisional Director of Planning, Housing and Climate Emergency has referred the application to the Planning Committee in the interest of transparency, as the applicant is a councillor." So to be clear, members, we're here not because this is a major application, it is because of who I am as the applicant. And what I'm asking you to do today, please, members, is to treat me like any other applicant in Torbay and support the officer recommendation you have before you and approve the application. If I wasn't a councillor, that's what would already have happened by now. So, by way of context, my family have lived on Waterside Road since 1987. The site was bought in 2014 from Torbay Council as amenity land, with the potential for development subject to paying an overage to Torbay Council. The financial amount payable to the council has been determined by the district valuer and agreed with the council's land agent and the chief executive. And that allows us to bring forward the development on the site. The site does, as you've been told by officers, have 4 main constraints. To the north of the site, there's been recordings of horseshoe bats. To the west of the site, there is calcareous grassland along the top of the quarry wall. Outside the site and adjacent to the western boundary, there is a regionally important geological site, and the site as a whole is an ULPA, and the ULPA designation primarily relates to the views of that wider block of land, of which this is only part in views from the Dartmouth Road, because it's a gateway from Paignton towards Brixham. So I want to talk about how we've addressed those concerns in 4 years of work with officers. We've put a very significant amount of work in. On ecology, the approved outline application, there was a report by Professor Altringham. He's the preeminent UK expert on bats. He's the author of the 3 main textbooks, an advisor to Natural England, advisor to the Bat Conservation Trust and the BBC, and there's also a report from Dr. Beale. He's an expert botanist. And as a result of their work, we've now got before you a LEMP, Landscape and Ecological Management Plan, a KEMP, a Construction and Ecological Management Plan, a CMS, which is a construction method statement, a lighting design strategy, and a draft section 106. And through those documents, the senior Devon County ecologist who's considered all of the ecological information has confirmed there'll be no negative impact on either the calcareous grasslands or greater horseshoe bats. So that deals with 2 of the 4 constraints. On geology, the site, the western boundary, is adjacent to the regionally important geological site. That's the quarry wall face that you would have seen from the main road. It's outside of the site area, and also officers have suggested a condition that we've accepted to ensure that there's a report from an expert geologist prior to undertake any works on the site, so we can be sure of that 3rd constraint. That's been satisfactorily dealt with, and your officers were happy at that. So that leaves the final 4th constraint, and that is the fact that the site itself is an ULPA. Now, as you've seen, members, adjacent to the site, there have been other developments within the ULPA. We have up on screen the one at Waterside View, and I've put these all so they're equivalent to one another in terms of scale. These are all on the same sizing. So that's Waterside View. That's already been approved. That's the Coyd construction development. You might have seen 2 of those properties. There have actually been 3 approved. And that's the proposals before you now today that I'm making. So in relation to those, and just flipping back, I would suggest Waterside View is very close spacing between the dwellings. There looks to appear a large massing of development there. I would suggest there's
1 minute remaining.
Closeness to the road with Coyd construction, whereas the proposals you have before you show small dwellings with large spacious gaps between. If we compare that to the outline showed in pink, you'll see it's actually significantly smaller than the outline indicative proposals, and the blue areas show how much smaller it is. So your officers were satisfied this addressed the issue of the ULPA constraints, and what I would encourage you to do, members, is to support the recommendation of your officers and approve the application subject to the conditions set out in the outline report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. And now I must ask you that you please leave the meeting room whilst the committee enter questions, deliberations, and then vote. Thank you. Committee members, I will now invite questions to the planning officer. Please may I remind members, questions should only cover matters not raised in the presentation. Are there any members wishing to ask a question, please? Councillor Fox, thank you.
We've heard a fair bit about the ULPA from Councillor Billings. I just really want the officer's view on whether the ULPA in any way has been compromised by this development, or whether they are satisfied that the ULPA can survive the development relatively unharmed, shall we say.
Just before you go on to answer the question, can I just confirm, Councillor Fox, that Councillor Billings is here in his personal capacity, so therefore it's Mr. Billings only in this regard? Just to stand corrected, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you. So policy C5 in the Torbay local plan relates to ULPAs, and that says that development within ULPAs, as shown on the policy map, will only be permitted where it does not undermine the value of the ULPA as an open or landscaped feature within the urban area, and it makes a positive contribution to the urban environment and enhances the landscape character of the Olper. So in this case, we're dealing with a reserve matters application, so we've established that the principle of 3 dwellings on the site is acceptable. So then we really have to balance then at this reserve matters stage how the size, scale and visual appearance, how that fits within the site, and particularly then how that impacts on that Olper designation. I think I tried to sort of highlight in the committee report the fact that we have had other development, particularly at Waterside View, and then it's at number 26 and 27 Waterside Road that were also within the Olper designation. And we kind of have to look at how that all fits in together, and if it would lead to an undermining of the Olper and how it sort of fits in together. I think it's quite difficult when we've established that 3 dwellings can be sited on the site at the outline stage. So there's always going to be some level of impact on the Olper. It's just if the impact itself is acceptable and conforms with policy C5. So the overall value of the Olper hasn't been significantly undermined. And it was my assessment that with this application, which does follow on a refused application, by its reduction in size and the massing, and that it does sort of create some sort of further views through the site and additional landscaping, that the overall impact would be acceptable. So that was my sort of assessment, but obviously that is subjective.
Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. And I'm also assuming, by what you said, that the cumulative impact of these extra 3 dwellings is not going to place any kind of additional serious harm on the ULPA.
Yes, so we have to consider obviously the cumulative impact, the fact that we have already allowed development within the Olper, and then the impact of this development within the Olper. And when considering it all in combination, it was my assessment that it was an acceptable impact with the reductions which we've seen with this current reserve matters application. The previous reserve matters application, which was refused, did include a reason for refusal, which was based on the impact on the Olper and design and visual appearance. So it's my opinion that this has gone far enough now to be acceptable on those grounds.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. Any other questions? Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. 2 points. First of all, I think for clarity, Mr. Billings claimed that this would have been dealt potentially differently. My view is there's a number of objections, therefore the correct route for this is through the planning committee. Just wanted to clarify, is my thinking correct? And then I've got some questions.
So our process, if the applicant was not a committee member, if we receive any objection and that's contrary to the officer recommendation, what we would undertake is our site review meeting protocol. So what I would do is I would write my officer report, my recommendation. I would send that to the local ward members and I would give them 1 week to confirm back if they were happy with that. If they were not, then we would decide if it needed to be referred to the planning committee. So you're correct in saying that it would not automatically be dealt with under delegated powers because there have been objections. So it's very right in bringing that up.
Thank you very much. And through you, Madam Chair, basically there's six objections, or the 6 areas that are highlighted in the report. And I just kind of wanted to go through them because in my head, just for clarity first of all, the first one is site history. The second one, site removed from neighbourhood plan by the independent examiner. And the third one was the impact on the Olper. Now, am I correct in assuming that those 3 particular concerns would have been dealt with at the outline permission stage?
So certainly impact on the OLPA is something which would need to be considered at the outline, but also at this reserve matters stage. So the OLPA is definitely a material planning consideration that we need to look at now. The other comments were very much not necessarily material planning considerations, but they were considerations about the neighbourhood plan process, how that sort of fitted in if the site was sort of put forward to be allocated and then potentially removed. I think that was the point of what that commentator was making. And then also very much that kind of linked into sort of site history, previous applications on the site. So that was kind of what that sort of representation was sort of referring to.
Thank you very much. And the final point, if I may, through you, highway safety. There's enough written in the report about the visibility splayer. I'm comfortable with that. Can you just talk me through the impact on wildlife ecology?
Yep, so at the outline stage, so the, oops, that on. Let me just bring up my relevant section. So the site is within the sustenance zone for the Greater Horseshoe Bat, and it's within, it's within 5.5 kilometres northwest of the Berryhead to Sharkham Point component of that South Hams area of conservation. So at the outline stage, a HRA was undertaken, and that was undertaken by the DCC ecologist. They made a number of recommendations within that appropriate assessment and the stage 2 assessment, and they said that providing those recommendations were followed, they were happy that there would not be any likely significant effect on the SAC, the Special Area of Conservation. So a lot of those recommendations linked to sort of lighting, the need for a LEMP, a KEMP, landscaping details. So all of that information has been put forward with this Reserve Matters application, and our ecologist has confirmed they're happy with the details. But one other point was that they needed to be a condition which removes permitted development rights for micro wind turbines on the site. So providing all of that has been taken into account, and that is one of the recommended conditions. Our Devon County Council ecologist is happy that the application is acceptable in terms of an ecological standpoint, and we have also had comments from Natural England confirming that they don't have any objections to the proposal.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Tolshard, you wish to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The distance between the three houses is quite wide, quite good, and the distance, I think, between the three proposed dwellings and Waterside View is also quite large. It was quite difficult, though, to judge when we were on the site how the height of particularly House 3, which is the sort of larger of the three, the height of that related to the nearest house on Waterside View. Standing on the site, you can see that the nearest property, but I just wanted to get in my mind how high this new house would be relative to that one, whether it sits below it on this site, which is actually quite a steep site.
Councillor Tolshard, was that your question for the officer?
Yes, that was my question.
Okay, thank you very much.
That is my question, yes,
Thank
to ask
you.
how the height relates to the nearest house in Waterside View.
Thank you. Okay, lovely. I've just brought up the sort of the proposed street scene elevation. So you can see the nearest property at Waterside View is indicated on this box here. So that should give you an indication of the height differences. So you can see roughly where the ground floor level is of that closest property at Waterside View is roughly equal with the ridge height of the proposed dwellings. Obviously, the proposed dwellings are significantly closer to the road than that property, the nearest property at Waterside View, but they are significantly lower.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Okay, and in that case then we'll go into the debate. Who would like to start off the debate? Councillor Fox.
Just one comment, it's in the report, just to support it really, and that is the need for a structural geological survey, which is on page 86. I would say I strongly support that.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. Any further debate? Do we have a proposal? Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. No further debate, but happy to move the recommendation as proposed by our officers.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Fox. Thank you. Is there any further debate on the proposal? No? Everybody happy with everything they've wished to say? Okay, in that case then we will go to the vote. All in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. In that case, I declare this application as approved. And that brings us to the end. So I just want to thank everyone for attending this planning committee. This meeting is now closed, and I look forward to seeing you all at the next meeting and wish you all a safe journey home. Thank you very much.